Hello. 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 Good evening, everybody. Boo! It's me, Skully Crump, and I will be your host this evening, telling you all about a murder that happened inside of Disneyland. Not that it's funny, because it's not, but it is a true story. Something that happened in a time known as the 1980s, when Disneyland was a little bit more dangerous as it was trying to find its place. How's everybody doing this evening over in the chat? David, Mark Brickey's not here tonight. Oh, not funny, Kevin. Not funny indeed. We're not talking about the senior citizen. That's not what we're talking about. Don't jump the gun. This is a story published in a book, one of my favorite books, that talks about some of the tragic things that have happened at Walt's Magic Kingdom. Everything you will hear tonight is absolutely, positively true. It's all based on something that happened at Disneyland in 1981. When something went down. Jump into tonight's story, and it is absolutely true, as those clippings that you will see. It's not smelly, it's Skully Crump. Thank you for correcting yourself, Michael. Let's jump into our story. The story that I'm reading you this evening comes to us from a book called Mouse Tales, written by one of my favorite Disney authors, David Cohen. I'll be reading from you an excerpt from the chapter 7, The Tragic Kingdom, and it's all absolutely true. As you can see, all the headlines below are real headlines from 1981 when this story went down. Let's get started, shall we? When Walt came to town in 1954, Anaheim was a sleepy rural community of orange groves and open fields. A population of only 30,000. It could never last. Disneyland's incredible success caused an immediate swell in the local population. There wasn't just a temporary influx of tourists. Thousands of people relocated to the area to work at the park, at the related businesses that sprang up all around Disneyland. As nearby property value shot up, farmers, they started to cash out. In came a motley assortment of businesses aiming to make a quick buck off of out-of-towner cheap motels, restaurants, liquor stalls, and cheesy souvenir shops. The businesses competed for park visitors' loose change, either by using Disney-ish theming, like a Peter Pan Motor Lodge or the Inn of Tomorrow, or by overpowering them with maximum neon to get all that attention. Anaheim quickly became part of the gritty world Disney was intent on locking out of his land. There had to be a sense of safeguards to keep it that way. In addition to the mountainous berm and barbed wire fence that encircles the park, even before guests approach the ticket booths out front, they and their possessions are given a once-over at a security checkpoint. And this is before we have the security scannings that we have today. A full security force numbering in the hundreds, including undercover officers, patrol the grounds. In the security office sits a hotline to the police department located just 2 minutes away on Harbor Boulevard. The precautions are designed not only to protect the guests, but also to preserve the image. After all, what could be more distracting to a Disneyland visitor than an ambulance streaking across Fantasyland? This, I'm going to pause for a second, is an important part of the story. That's what we call foreshadowing, because Disney did not want an ambulance ever to be seen on their property. They wanted to ensure that every guest could escape and go away to a place of fantasy. And this story we're going to learn today talks about how, to their detriment, they tried to avoid reality. But avoiding reality is not something that you can do when you have thousands of guests coming to your park every day in different health conditions, different mental conditions, different parts of society, different ideas of how to deal with the consequences of a small little thing that would left a lot of people at Disneyland in a different space on this night in 1981. What could clash more with the detailed theming than paramedics or policemen, or be more unlike Disney than gunshots or a pool of blood? So even when violence and crime do seep in, the park is determined to maintain its guise as the happiest place on earth. At all times, at all costs. On March 7th, 1981, preserving the image of the ultimate price, the life of a teenage boy. 18-year-old Mel Yorba was a burly, curly-haired high school wrestler with tickets to an all-night party at Disneyland, hosted by a Riverside aerospace firm. He and 4 of his friends drove in from Riverside, chugging beer the whole way to Disneyland. By the time they got inside the park, they were feeling sufficiently rambunctious. As they walked past the Matterhorn, Yorba jokingly reached out and made a mistake and pinched a bypassing woman on her rear. The woman's boyfriend, a 28-year-old unemployed drywaller, James O'Driscoll, didn't care much for the joke. Incensed, he chased after the group, grabbed Yorba's skinnier friend, a Calvin Davis, and shoved him against the Matterhorn fence. When his girlfriend yelled they had the wrong guy, O'Driscoll let him alone. Suddenly, Yorba broke in and punched O'Driscoll in the face, sending him down to one knee. The teens regrouped and walked away towards the submarine voyage, cursing back at the couple. O'Driscoll's girlfriend hurried to his side and told him Yorba was the one who had pinched her on her rear. O'Driscoll again ran after the group, and this time grabbed Yorba by his shirt. Yorba spun around, struck O'Driscoll in the face, and then dove at him. The two tumbled down to the pavement, and after a few blows, right outside of the submarines, Yorba rolled off the man onto his back, his shirt stained in deep crimson red, the knife wound in his chest. According to O'Driscoll, he had approached the teens merely to demand an apology. He brandished his 8.5-inch buck knife only for personal protection. Amid the gang of five, he said he never imagined Yorba would charge an armed man. During the fight, he claimed Yorba fell on the knife twice. According to Yorba's friends, no one knew the stranger was armed until Yorba, during the struggle, cried out, "He has a knife." Davis, he saw O'Driscoll lunging a blade at Yorba. So Davis wrenched it free of O'Driscoll's hand and kicked him in the head. O'Driscoll got up and come after Davis, but stopped to pick up the weapon and fled. The teens began to chase until O'Driscoll stopped, turned around, and threatened them with the knife to back off. O'Driscoll sprinted from the scene, hoping to sneak out of the park, but Anaheim police were waiting for him at the front exit and chased him back into the park. They finally trapped him when he crouched to hide behind some bushes near the Disneyland railroad tracks. Searchers recovered the knife from the moat around Sleeping Beauty Castle. Literally threw the weapon in a river, but this time the moat around Sleeping Beauty Castle. Think of all the people that have thrown a coin in there to make a wish. His wish when he threw in his knife was to escape, to get away, because as he was on the run, he knew he had made a fatal mistake. After 2 court trials, O'Driscoll was sentenced to 16 years in life for second-degree murder. Yet the real controversy would suffice over what happened after the stabbing. After abandoning the chase, O'Driscoll Davis returned to his bloodied buddy. Yorba got up, took a few steps. They would be his last, and then the young man collapsed. A licensed vocational nurse visiting the park had seen the scuffle and came to help. Noticing the widening bloodstain, she quickly removed Yorba's shirt to find one stab wound in the chest and a second in his abdomen. Got it right that time. The visitor applied pressure to both wounds with her bare hands to stem the profuse bleeding and she thought she temporarily had it under control. She kept reassuring Yorba that help was on the way. But a few minutes later, he began coughing up blood and going into shock. His eyes started to roll back. His lips, they would turn blue as he faded in and out of consciousness. By that time, 4 security officers had arrived, but offered little assistance. Another guest tried to help, but the guards just pushed me away, he related. I was so full of blood, I could have been the person who committed the murder for all they know. About 20 minutes after the stabbing, a park nurse, Elizabeth Micco, finally arrived on the scene. She quickly decided to rush Yorba to the hospital. In the back of Disneyland, a first aid van. She assumed it was not only the fastest alternative, but knew an unwritten policy. You weren't to call an ambulance on stage, ever. It might detract from other guests' enjoyment of the park. The van took 11 minutes to reach the hospital. And don't forget, it took 20 minutes for for the nurse to get to the young boy. So along this timeline, we've got over a half hour since the boy had the knife put inside of him. Along the way, the nurse applied pressure to the bandage, and when Yorba stopped breathing, gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But the teen did not respond. At the medical center, he was dead on arrival from blood loss and a punctured heart and liver. On the surface, it appeared as if he had been sacrificed to preserve the peaceful atmosphere of the park. The press jumped on this story, and within days, the media unleashed a torrent of harsh criticism on Disneyland's handling of the situation. First, Yorba was taken to Palm Harbor Hospital in Garden Grove. Although it was the closest medical facility, 2 trauma centers trained in handling this type of emergency were each just a mile further. Second, they took him in an inconspicuous company van, which had no warning lights or siren, and except for oxygen, no life-saving equipment. The vehicle was legally slowed by traffic signals, posted speed limits, and heavy traffic. Not only could an ambulance have made the trip more quickly, but city paramedics could have taken extra steps at the scene. They could have forced oxygen into Yorba's lungs, administered transfusions of liquids, placed him in pressurized suit to keep the blood in. His upper body would have known how to take him to a certified trauma center. But unfortunately, this wasn't the first time Disneyland had been accused of mishandling an emergency. The uproar surrounding the tragedy revealed that county health officials had long been trying to meet with the park management to discuss their medical treatment policies to no avail. We've been talking to people at Disneyland for about 4 years. One fire department official told reporters, "Something like this is pretty hard to swallow, especially when we had a station just 1 minute away. Our medical unit was 3 minutes away." For at least 3 years, the county fire department, Office of Emergency Medical Services, had been urging the park to make greater use of paramedics, but it was completely rebuffed. In its defense, Disney replied that it had summoned paramedics about 5 or 6 times in the last year. Anaheim Fire Department records revealed that the park called paramedics just 4 times in the previous 2 years, and an ambulance entered the park in only one of those cases during a special event closed to the public. This case would be tied up into the courts for a while. A man would go to jail for 16 years, but a young boy would lose his life. So my question to you is, if Disney would have reacted quicker, if they would have not been worried about causing trauma for other guests, would this have happened? Or was it too late? No one will ever know, but it was a debate in headlines and newspapers for quite some time. And in the end, Disney would address that they would change the policy, and the family would sue for $60 million. Case to be settled out of court. This is one of many stories that go into the very dark side of a place that has a 99.9% happiness rate. But when you have thousands of people entering your gates every single day, some are going to show up intoxicated. Some are going to pinch a stranger's rear, and another may have a knife. The odds are that not everybody's going to be well behaved. The odds are that things are going to go wrong. And over 70 years, a couple of stories like this do exist. But this is just one small story in an overall place of happiness, but does have its own dark side. Friends, thank you so much for showing up to our first Halloween tale. My name is Skully Crump. I hope you, I'm not going to say had a good time, but I hope you maybe think about things differently on your next walk past the submarine lagoons, and think about how wrong things can go when people have bad intentions inside of a happy place. Thank you all. Have a good night.